How's the sound? That's great. Your Prussia's coming. Are you gonna modify the board? Getting set up here, so it's gonna take a second more. Been trying to upgrade what you see so it looks better. So we'll see how well it looks in a second. Thanks, Frank. Might be a little toasty here today, so not sure how much time I can spend with you guys without roasting too much today. Let me get some of this stuff out of the way. So do you guys have some questions that you want to ask today? You might want to post them in the chat or in Discord. And I'll bring it up in 2 seconds here. Just waiting for the clock to chime 6 o'clock. There we go. Okay, how's everyone doing today? I've been messing with the Raspberry Pi a bit, so some interesting stuff has been going on. What questions do you guys have for me today? I didn't get a lot of questions on Discord, except for print quality questions, and obviously the space at the moment is still limited. But what I'm working on is actually trying to set up Clipper, which I had a pop-up stream the other day, so I thought I'd go through it again. And you can let me know if the actual visuals are better. So I'm going to go over to the browser and pull up Clipper in a second. So 2 seconds, let me swap over to it. So this is Clipper. It runs on Raspberry Pi. It may run on other things. I believe there's something like Sailfish or something. And essentially there's instructions over here on how to install. Now I have a session already open in TerraTerm, which I'll show you right now. So I've logged into TerraTerm, and all we have to do this is actually follow the directions on the actual page for the browser. So preparing the OS, we've already installed Octoprint. So Octoprint Let me see if I can bring it up here real quick. Hopefully that's the right address. And it's Pi and Raspberry. So I'll just save that for now. So it's asking if I want to upgrade. So we can do that real quick. Doesn't take long. Essentially it's a fresh install that I've already done. I'll cover that more when I do a tutorial. But it only takes a few seconds. So while that's going on, I'll look at the chat. See if there's any questions yet. So as soon as this completes, it's going to want to reboot, which means we're going to lose our TerraTerm session. So at least you'll see me reopen it, hopefully. So right now it's running a bunch of commands in the background. It says update successful, restarting. So it's going to wait until it's ready, and then it's going to allow you to reload. So this might take a second to reload. And while that's going on, let me check on the TerraTerm session, see if it's still there. It is. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over to Firefox for a second. Or excuse me, not Firefox. We're going to go over to the tab for Clipper. And the cool thing about using TerraTerm is you can copy two commands. Granted, these are shell commands, so it's going to be kind of interesting, but you can just copy that, and then we'll go over to TerraTerm and I'll show you what happens. So inside TerraTerm, all you have to do is right click, and then you'll get a pop-up that'll say, do you want to paste, and you click OK. Or you can go over here, and I believe you can paste as well, and it'll give you the same dialog. So it's doing the first command for us right now. And essentially all a git is it's a download from a repository. And the repository in this case is Clipper. And so this may take a few moments to actually unzip, but there's the second command. There's no carriage return, so you have to hit enter. And then it's going to ask for your password. In this case, it's Raspberry. You just hit enter, and it'll begin to extract all the files in there. And this is basically running a shell script. That's why it ends in .sh. But it also needs that preceding / to run it. So if you were to run it from this directory, you'd have to use the / in front of the name. That's just a Linux or Unix thing that's always existed. But let me look at the chat real quick here. Okay, so this is going to take a few minutes, obviously. I'm trying to speed up my processor so that you can see these things faster in real time. But this is real time on my computer at the moment. So as soon as this completes, we're going to have to do the next command. So I'll just move over and look at that for a second. So inside the browser, you can watch as it's running over here. Whoops. We lost a bit of the command, but usually you can scroll up and see it. But what we're going to need to do next is actually change to the Clipper directory. And the Clipper directory is going to give us the information that we need in order to install. So this is going to be kind of interesting in that it's asking us to CD, and then there's a little tilde, and then it's saying what directory you want to go into. Now the current working directory we can look at in a second. It's I believe PWM is the Unix command, which is present working directory. But we can check on that as soon as this completes, which hopefully it'll do soon, although it does take some time. So I'll look at the chat while that's going on. Yeah, that was one of my big problems, Frank. When I did install Clipper the first couple of times, I was having errors. And usually, in my case, with Clipper, it turns out you have to have everything installed on the board. And that's why it looks so simple. But the main things that you need, technically, to see if you can connect to it are you're going to have a bed thermistor and a hot end thermistor. And then you're going to have end stops. Otherwise, it fails. But the end stops are based on the programming of the actual script file that you use to run it. So that looks like it completed. So let's see if I can go over and do this command where you can see it nice and clear. So inside TerraTerm, I'm going to copy the command to do the change directory, but also show you present working directory so that you can understand what I'm talking about. So over here, I'm going to say PW or present working directory, enter. And currently we're in home.py. But what we're going to change to is actually going to be change directory tilde command, which I've got to hit shift to do. Then it's going to be / and it's going to be, you can type KL, and you might be able to type tab, which might auto-complete it, which in this case it does. Then you press enter. So now we're in that directory. Now we need to do a make menu config. And this is the part that gets a little difficult, so it might take a couple of tries. So I'm going to paste or type make menu, and I can't autocomplete on this yet, so what we can do is just see what's there. It actually just did, but if you do an ls, it'll show you what's in the directory. In this case, we have make file, but we don't have a make menu config. So this has got to be a program of some type inside here. So let's try it and see if we can do it. Make menu, and then I'm going to hit tab and see what happens. It might take a second. Menu config. So I'm going to hit enter, and it's going to bring us into the setup for this particular low-level thing. So this is the default configuration, which is the AT Mega chipset series. We're not using that, so we're going to right arrow. Then what we're going to do is we're going to find our chipset, in this case the LPC 1760X. Inside here, our processor, we're on a turbo, so it's not LPC 1768. It's the 1769, so we'll hit spacebar. And now we have that set. Down here gets a little interesting. We have to use the SmoothieWare boot, I believe. So we're going to down arrow, and we're using USB, so we don't want to use serial UART. Those are actually pins possibly on this board. So we're all set there. So we hit the Q button, and then we hit the Y button to save. And now all we have to do is do make, and that means build in this case. So I'm just going to type make and then enter. And it's going to compile, in theory, our board. But apparently we have some kind of issue here. So creating symbolic link out board, building auto config, compiling, and then it's saying something about not found. So there's some kind of error. So we'll go back into config and check by up arrowing. And we'll look in here to see what we've got. So I may have skipped a step and not known it, but let's see what we got here. We got the right board. We got the right processor. We're using a bootloader for USB. Might be enable low level config. So I'm gonna hit quit, and then yes for save, and then I'll up arrow to make again and see if it works. It doesn't. So there's something wrong that I obviously don't see initially. So let me check on the chat while I'm doing that. ls-a is all. We'll show all the hidden files. Yeah, so what you're trying to tell everyone is that when you type ls-a, you'll see all. So there's hidden files. Usually they have a dot in front of them. But in this case, menu config, I don't see, which is interesting. So let's do ls-al, and we'll see it in a different format. And that's interesting. So I'm going to try a common board first. So I'm going to go back to make menu config. I'm going to turn this off for the moment. I'm going to change the processor back to a known good in theory. Then I'm going to go to the processor here, which is the default for ramps. So we're good there. So we don't need to change that. Let's enable this. Baud rate's already known. We don't need to use GPIO pins, which are general purpose input output pins. And then don't worry about this. I don't think it's relevant. So we'll hit Q and then yes. Then we'll try make again and see if it works. So there's something wrong with my compilation, which is super weird, but let's do an update again. So I'm just going to do a git because something might have gone wrong, and then I'm going to unzip it again. But how's the actual view? Can you actually see what I'm working on in the actual chat? So everything's nice and clear, readable. Does this sound good? Let me check on the chat while that's going on. Okay. So that finished. Let's run the shell script again. So let's see what happens here. For some reason I either had an issue or there's something wrong or corrupted on my actual Raspberry Pi, or I'm supposed to reboot it. Let me take a look over at Octopi. It looks fine, so. There could be a change that occurred actually in Clipper. Let's see if we can find that. So if I go over to the browser for a second, inside here, we're going to look around, see if we can find out where it's actually stored. So it's going to be someplace on GitHub. So it's probably going to be right here. So let's see if there's any updates. So it looks like they did something yesterday. So that might be why I'm having issues. We could see if there's any actual issues. Usually they don't monitor these. Looks like someone's having trouble with their SKR board, which we're using. But they're using a Robin Nano, which I'm totally confused by. So it says, I made the Robin Nano bin, and what they're saying is they made the firmware file, and I copied it to a freshly formatted SD card, flashed it. After 100% update, won't do nothing. Waited about 5 minutes, restarted the printer, and just says booting. I double checked everything before I did this. So in this case, you can back out by recreating a firmware.bin in VS Code and re-recover your board. I've actually tested this. So technically you shouldn't have a board issue. But a bunch of these issues don't seem relevant. Bed screw adjust does not respect Z offset. So that might be a user issue. They may need to set like a -1 value or something, but I'm not sure. But it looks like it's brand new, which is the issue. So I may have just pulled something down that's different. So let's go back over and see if I can get it to work. Otherwise, we'll just roll it over to the previous version. So inside here, looks like it's still unpacking everything. Hopefully this goes better than before. Otherwise, we'll just see. Hey Dave, how's it going? Yeah, I'm trying to get the actual video so that you can actually see without it being blurry. So I spent some time working on it this week. So unfortunately, these unzips take a little bit of time. And I don't want to mess with it because you'll see what you just saw a couple minutes ago if it was user-derived issues. But right now it looks like it's unpacking something for an ARM processor because it says unpacking. Okay, let me look at the chat and see what's going on. Eventually I'll have a third screen so I can actually leave the chat up. I have to actually toggle between it. So apparently we're going to be waiting a bit while this tries to catch up. Let me see if I can make this bigger. Sorry about that. All I did was change the screen size. There's stuff still here. Because TerraTerm is a very tiny window normally. You can expand it out, but there's a setting in here where you can change it. You can actually change a lot of things in here. I'll show you that while that's going on. So like if you go to window, you can change the color of your text. You can change the background of your text. So if you want to toggle it to something that's easier to read, you can do that. And then we can even change the text color. And then there's other settings that I've forgotten, but obviously if you want to change serial ports, this will auto to the speed that you're working with, usually. So you shouldn't have to worry about this. But it's very easy to use TerraTerm. It's just about exploring all the settings. It's got interesting things that are already in it. Obviously we're SSHing right now, which is ciphered communication over Telnet. And let's see. You can change your keyboards. Obviously there's other settings in here. I don't want to go too much into them. TEK is I can't remember what it is. It's trans key? No. I'd have to look it up. It's a key of some type, I think. You can also run scripts on this. So down in here, there's a way to load a script if you want to script things. And that would be a way to automatically run it. I just can't remember where it is. TTY record is probably going to record what you're doing. And then replay is replay what you're doing. But let's see if this is finished. Looks like it's pretty close. Looks like Python needed to update. And Clipper is running. So let's do the previous command. We're already in the directory, so let's go to menu config. We'll change this to that. Already has the right processor, smoothie board. Don't care about those two settings. Don't know if we need that right there, so I'm going to do a quit and then yes. And we'll do a make again and see if that fixed it. So that looks like it's a little bit better. Somehow I interrupted the actual shell script. So it's about to pop a actual file for us. Now there's a problem with the file. To get this off the actual board, you need something like FileZilla. So I'm going to take you over to that. So here's FileZilla. Inside FileZilla, I already have the actual address of where we need to communicate, but it changed on me, so I need to change it to that. Username is Pi, password is raspberry. So I'm going to do quick connect, establish the connection, and then inside here, we're just going to say OK for that. You can see the readout of what's occurring up here, but what we're interested in is actually our output. So let's try the Clipper directory, then the out file, and inside the out file you have your clipper.bin. So I need to clean up the folder that I'm about to copy to. So let me just double check to see what my downloads file looks like. So I need to wipe out some stuff here real quick. Okay, so I'm going to map to my downloads file over here. So to do that, we can go to like downloads, and that'll bring us to the directory. Hopefully we're in it right now. So I need to refresh this because I just took out a bunch of files, and I'm going to just drag across. So there's your Clipper file. So now if we go over to the browser, you'll be able to see this. Let me just get to the right one. I think you'll be able to see it here, but give me a second. I know it's not going to be as good. Okay, so inside here we have Clipper. So we need to right click on this, and we need to rename this to firmware.bin in lowercase. So I need to grab the drive out of the actual setup here. So let me just reset the camera in case it wants to power off while I'm talking. So as we have this set up over here, we can check this real quick. This is directly connected to the computer, and I want to show you that it's got Marlin on it real quick. So I'm going to go over to Pronterface. Let me just reset Pronterface real quick. Okay, so I have Pronterface open, and you can see the board. So I'm just going to try a connect. It's probably going to be COM17. And it says printer is now online. Just so you know, you can check your settings by typing M503. And you know this is basically Marlin based on the display. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually extract the drive. So I'm going to go over and I'm going to pop it out real quick. So I'll take this out, pop out the drive, and I'm actually going to place it in here because I can't load the firmware directly normally. But we can actually still do it on this particular board because I've gotten into a habit over here because it still has a USB card. So I'll let that come back up and we'll do it through the browser. So now I just got to find my desktop browser real quick here. So over here, we can see the drive still because we have the old firmware on it. So I'm going to go back over to downloads for a second, right click, and send it to the D drive. Then we can check the D drive. Now this won't work after we do this unless you reload this one. So you could always rename this to something else, like temp. And then if you ever need to reuse this, you're going to rename it to firmware.bin. Hopefully this won't get wiped out, but we can always change the cur as well. So we'll call it curl for now. Hopefully that won't get deleted. So let's go. You can't see what I'm doing, can you? Sorry about that. So let me just undo what I did here real quick and get it so you can see it. Oh, I'm on the wrong screen. Sorry about that. Give me a second here. There we go. So over here, what I'm going to do is rename this. I'm going to call it temp. If we ever need to reuse it, we can go back to it. Now I'll go back over to the desktop and I'll power cycle it. Then I'll reconnect it. And so now if we try and connect via the actual connection and interface, this is going to get interesting real quick. So it's probably not the same COM port. Let's try connecting. Gives us an error, doesn't know what's going on. We're actually going to be using this to connect via the COM port on the Raspberry Pi. So let's see if we can actually set that up real quick. So I'm going to unplug this from my computer. But before I do that, I'll actually show you the reason it doesn't work. So I got a couple of actual thermistors that I'm going to use here, which are right here. And these thermistors are probably the reason we're seeing a lot of errors. So let me just bring it over to the workbench for a second. Gotta open this bag up real quick because there's no tear line on it. And I'll check on the chat in just a second. So essentially I got several of these. I'm going to basically take out two and use them. So it's a thermistor used to tell temperature. So I'm going to plug one in to where the first hot end will be, which is right there. And the thermistor is just going to be free in space. I'm going to do the other one as well. These are brand new, so hopefully they're not broken. Unfortunately, they're in a nice little Gordian knot. So it's going to take me a second to pull one out. Well, that's interesting. Apparently they're looped around each other. If you haven't noticed, I'm struggling right now to get another one free. Somehow they're looped through each other in some cases. There we go. So here's the next one. So I'm just going to connect it for the bed. So essentially it's just another thermistor. Let me get this pile of mess out of the way. Now it's already set up for power, so I'm not going to show you how to wire that today. But I am going to connect end stops, so I'm going to have to do this kind of gingerly. So I'm going to put a weight here to make this look neat. And then I'm going to bring in an end stop right here, because we don't have a full setup for a printer to show you. And we should look up where the actual end stop functionality is. In this case, it's probably voltage ground signal, but I like to verify because I plugged it in wrong before and I don't want to buy another board. So I'll go over to the web browser for a second. And inside the browser, I'm going to go to the actual SKR 1.4, and I'm going to find out what my pins are, which is voltage ground signal for X minimum. So let's connect that up real quick. Hopefully we can get away with one for the moment. So the wiring on this is red for voltage, black for ground, and green for signal. So we're just going to plug that in. And so now that we've got that set up, we don't have the ability currently to connect to this, but what we'll do is try and do it from the computer again. So let's go over to Pronterface and see if it works. So I'm going to try connect. It won't connect. So let's check to see what the actual speed of it is. So if I do device manager, it may be a different COM port if it exists. So in this case, it says 17 is connected. We can turn it off just to make sure. So let me see what's going on here. So I'm going to turn off that port and it goes away. So I'm going to turn it back on. So we know we're on port 7. So we'll change this to 17. This still might not work. So the speed is probably going to be 250,000. Okay, so it's giving us a funky error. So that is something different. But we can try a different baud rate. It's supposed to be default to 250,000. Also, it's not allowing us to read much, but we know something's going on. We're communicating with it somehow. So we're going to go back over to the workbench for a second, and I'm going to disconnect the cable from the computer and connect it to this being the Raspberry Pi. Let me check on the chat because I've been talking way too long. Okay, so now that we got that done, let me see where I am here. We're going to have to go back over to the browser to verify what our setup is. So inside here, we're going to go over to Clipper. We've already done this. We've already done the make. We've already pulled the actual firmware off. But we do need to find out what the active serial port is that we're connected to on the actual device. And what they're doing is they're doing a list of devices and they're looking for serial specifically, and then it's by ID and anything it sees being the wild card with the star. So let's copy this, go back over to TerraTerm, inside TerraTerm, as soon as I get it so I can see it, I'm going to right click. It'll put the command in for me, and I'll hit enter. So this is what it's telling you. This is your active serial port. The way that we can verify that that actually worked is to go back over to the browser, excuse me, not the browser, the desktop, and just pull it out of the Raspberry Pi for a second. Then go back over to TerraTerm and do the command again. So to do the command again, you can up arrow and hit enter. and so it doesn't see anything. So we can reconnect it to verify. So let me just bring up the screen here. I'm going to plug it back in. Then we'll go back over to TerraTerm. We'll up arrow for the command, press enter. So that definitely is our serial port. So we're just going to copy that for now, and we're going to store it someplace. One of the unfortunate things with TerraTerm is when you copy, sometimes it pastes because it thinks you're going to do that. So let me just put this aside for a second. And paste it here in my program. But we're going to go back over to the browser. And inside the browser, now that we know what the port is, this is what our serial port is going to be. So now it's telling us that we want to do a raised privilege command. And we're going to be talking to it to say it's a service. And the name of the service is Clipper. And we're going to stop it. So we have to do that in TerraTerm. So let me get a better visual for you here. So inside TerraTerm, it's probably, I forgot if it's PS for processes or services, but I'd have to look it up. But let's do PS minus A. No, that's not it. AL. So I don't remember the exact command to find the service, but we're going to just shut down the service. So I'm just going to paste. Of course, I got to paste the right thing. So let me grab it. So I'm going to paste it right here. It'll stop the command because I'm a sudo user, meaning raised rights. I'm not the root user. That's a different account. Let me just copy the next command. Paste it here. And what we're doing is we're saying we're going to flash the device. But unfortunately, we've already flashed it, so it's kind of useless because we did it manually. But let's see if we can get away with it. So it doesn't work on this particular board. Understandable. It does tell you what you should do to rename it. So we could actually find this file. Let's see if it's in here. So the file is actually in the out files. So we have to do, what is it, ls/out. Sorry, ls-al/ I might have it backwards, it's been a while. Let's just first list it. There we go. So there's the actual file. So if we were to change directory to out, if it'll let me. I keep putting the slash in front of it. Now we can ls and see it. So we can do a copy clip.bin and we can rename it to firmware.bin. There's other ways to do this. Let's do an ls to see if it worked. So now we have two files. Now we can go back and do that command. So to go back a directory, it's change directory space ... Now we're in the previous directory, so I'm going to up arrow. This may still not work, but let's see what happens. So the device actually, in this case, might be wrong on my part. So I'm pretty sure a couple of you are probably saying no. So let me grab that. So the command is actually going to have to change slightly. In this case, let me see if I can cut and paste it. So I'm copying it from someplace else there you can't see. I'm going to backspace to device. And I'm going to right click to paste. Now I'm going to hit enter. So it's asking for the root password, so it's raspberry. And it still doesn't work. So this is a manual copy in this case. So now we know that. I'm going to restart Clipper. So it's a sudo command again. I'll paste it here. And I'll restart the service. Down below though, it's going to talk about, let me see where you guys are seeing. Hang on a second. There we go. So inside here, we still have to load Octoprint to use it. So we have to go over and we have to find Clipper in Octoprint. So let's go to Octoprint. Inside, whoop, you're not seeing what I'm doing. Hang on a second. So it's saying configure Octoprint to use Clipper. So in this case, we need to go to, hang on a second here, Octoprint, and we need to click on the wrench. Inside the wrench, there's something for plugin manager. In here, we're going to have to get more. Then we can type Clipper. And it gives us two options. Right now we're not interested in the Marlin G code document for Clipper, but we are interested in this. So we're going to click install. This might take a second, and I'll check on the chat because obviously I haven't looked in a couple minutes. Yeah, apparently my Unix is a little rusty. PS is process or something, and auxiliary. We can take a look at that while this is loading just to see if it works. So let me bring that up. So over here, someone in the chat gave me the correct command, which is PS auxiliary. And these are the actual services possibly running. So there's a Clipper one in here someplace probably. But I don't see it right away. Obviously I need to make the screen bigger so I can see. But unfortunately it's not going to look good on your side if I do that. So I'm going to go over to what we were doing a second ago. And I'm going to restart now. It's going to say proceed. And this is where it gets kind of cool. After it comes back up, they've added some functionality that I like. It's going to take a second for it to boot. So I'm going to get some liquid in me because it's a little hot in here today. Obviously the tutorial is going to be much smoother when I get to it, but I'm going to do a reload now. And now we have a new tab called Clipper. Now we can try and connect to the device. It might be a mess. So it's saying something about no config file. So if we go over here or we go over here, we can try and open up the config. So as you can see, there's nothing here. So we gotta get a config in there. So what we're gonna do is cheat. So I'm gonna go back over to FileZilla for a second. And I'll show you where it is, or at least I'll try and find it. So inside FileZilla, if you go over here and you reconnect to the board, so quick connect, yes. We're going to go to the Clipper folder and see if there's an example folder. And you know how much I like examples, but in this case, we're going to have to deal with it for the moment. So I might not know exactly where it is, and I might have to look it up. So extras, movement, kinematics is movement. I just abbreviate in my head to what it actually is. So it's not there. Let's see, test, configs, here we go. So if we scroll through here, we see obviously the AT mega boards. 2560 would be like the ramps. What we're working with is the LPC config. So we're going to just drag this over here, and then we'll go to our downloads folder and see what's in there. So I'm going to go over to my file browser in a second. So I'm going to open this up, go to downloads. I'm going to right click on this and I'm going to edit in Notepad so that we can see it. And that definitely is not what we're looking for. So let's go over and look at the directions, because obviously I'm making a mess out of this. So if we go over to the browser, the right browser for me that is, we can look around actually on the Git and see if we can see it. So source, can look in here, that's a make file, it's not what we're looking for. So docs, this doesn't look like what we're looking for. Sorry, it's been a week since I played with this, so it's going to take a second to find it. Maybe it's called config because that's what it is. So these are all example files. Example config is probably what you're going to use, and we're going to have to copy that over. So let's find the directions for that, which are probably down here. So we'll do this in the actual browser. So let me go back over to TerraTerm. So in TerraTerm, I'm just going to copy both of those, or actually one of those, and I'll show you why. Because I think, let me show you what I'm doing. So over here, there's two commands. One is a copy, where it's moving something from one directory to another. And this one over here is an edit command with Nano. We're not going to do that one. We're going to skip that because there's an easier way to do this. So I'm going to copy this command, and it's just going to be a copy that we're going to do in TerraTerm. So in TerraTerm, sorry, I got to wait for, there we go. So I'm going to paste it, then I'm going to press enter, and it's copied the command into a present working directory, which I think is the temp directory. But the good thing is we can go back over to the file browser for a second and I'll show you what's going on. Or actually the browser. So inside the browser, what we're going to do is we're going to go over to Octoprint. We're going to do open and see if it's there. Do some reload changes. So we did make a change. I may have to reboot, but let's double check the directions just before I do that. So it says to edit the file. We're not going to do that. We already have this, but we have to change this command. So we could do the Nano to change that, but I'm going to avoid that, and I'll show you why in a second, hopefully. And then we also have to change to this. So let's first do that. So if we go over to the wrench, serial port, we're going to do temp printer. We'll save that. We're going to do a reboot real quick of this. Hopefully it'll appear, but let's see what happens. And I'll look at the chat and see what the questions are. Well, it's kind of quiet. So I'm going to attempt to reconnect. This may take a second. When I actually make the video, this will look fluid. But there's a lot of steps involved, and obviously I got to write them all down. So reload now. And hopefully, if we can see it, it'll be great. If we can't, then we'll have to do it another way. So let's try connect. So we got an issue with the pin. Let's open this. Now we can actually edit it easier. Here is our first issue, and that was the developer device or device for the serial. So I have that buffered someplace else. Let me just grab it real quick. And I'm going to go in here and I'm going to highlight up to there and I'm going to paste. Then I'm going to save it. Then we'll try and connect again. It may not work. We'll clear it. It says printer firmware has got an issue, so we'll try a restart. So we'll just do a reboot again. But it's far easier than editing Nano to do this. So it's going to take a second for that to come up. And the temperature is finally starting to drop here, so it's not 800 degrees anymore. So attempt to reconnect, it's still not there. Now let's try it. Hopefully it'll come right up. And let's try connect again. So it's saying something about PK6 not being valid. So PK6, I'm not sure what that is off the top of my head. So let's go to the config file. And I don't know how well you can see this, but there's going to be a PK6 in here someplace. And it's inside the config. So I got to scan around. We can probably change the baud rate, but I think that's it. So right here it says heat bed PK6. So that might not be the correct sense pin. So one of the things we can do is look at the physical board to make sure we're doing it right, and we can also correct it. Because I know the pins on this board are different. We're going to have to probably change that. So this was allegedly made for our configuration, and it's an example file. So the first thing we're going to do is look at the board and see what's going on. So I'm going to go over to the workbench in just a second. Let me just make sure the camera is in a good mood with this. And down here, we can check to see what these are. This is the thermal bed. And then over here, we have the extruder, but it's talking about the bed. So there could be a broken thermistor in our case, or it's a bad pin. So let's investigate the pins by going over to the web browser. And then we'll go over to the schematic. And what we're looking for is right here, which is 25. So it's P025. So I don't know the exact notation. So let's see if we can find that for Clipper. So configuration of Clipper. Frequently asked questions. And let's just do a search on pins on the file, or on this page. Apparently Control F doesn't work the way I thought it does here. So there's the pin. So what we're looking for is not the Arduino, but we're looking for the way we do it on our board. So I'm guessing it's going to be slightly different. So I might have to search online real quick here. So let's see if there's something on STM in here. Nothing I can see. So what I'm looking for is possible issues. We're actually using an analog pin, so we got to be careful, or at least that's what I think we're using. So let's do a quick search. SKR clipper, and it's going to be an SKR 1.4. And we need to know what the pin is. So Reddit's a good source. Hopefully we're going to be looking at the right thing here. But it's talking about the pin a different way. So that's probably what we're looking for right there. So let's go back and see. So sense pin. And if we look over here, it says sensor pin. So the sensor pin we're going to paste, and we're going to verify what we're working with over here, which is P025. So let's go back and check it again. So it's P0.25. So we're going to save it. So essentially it was the wrong pin number. Now we're probably going to have to do a restart yet again. Of course, when I do the actual tutorial on this, I'll probably forget some of these steps again. But let me check on the chat while it's booting. Hey James, how's it going? Trying to clean up my understanding of installing Clipper before I actually do a recorded tutorial, even though I'm recording right now. Or you're seeing the stream, so it's being recorded. So as soon as this comes up, hopefully it'll be good. Nothing much. I'm apparently cooking because the heat inside the building is a little hot. And I forgot to turn on my AC at lunch. So let's reload now. And let's try connect. Okay, now it's got another issue. So PH5. So we can go over to here. And we can look for that actual key. But I want to put this in something where I can actually read it. So I'm going to highlight everything, copy it. I'm going to put this in a Word doc so I can see it. So give me a second to get it so you can see this. Got to do this on the fly, so this might turn into something real bad real quick. But let's see if you can see it first. That's not looking too good. Hang on, let me add something and see if this works. Notepad. Then I need to add a Windows capture for you guys. And it still doesn't look great, but it's not terrible. So let's transition over to that. So the original error we had was something about, I think, PK5. So either something didn't save, which looks like the case, but I think we were talking about the actual other one. So I'm going to scan through here real quick, make sure I change the right sensor pin. Doesn't look like I changed it. So we should be able to save. So let's go back and grab that out of the browser. So inside the browser, we made a mistake with my edit. So that's the heat bed that we changed. So let's double check that again. So heat bed, we changed that to right here. So the error that we're getting is on the actual extruder. So now I gotta scan around for the extruder. So that pin looks okay. So let's go back and look at the error. Sorry, I was on the wrong screen. So if we're over here, we're going to look for the extruder, which says, sorry about that. Let's do a Control Z. So apparently every time I click, I'm copying. So down here, there's a sense pin that we also need to fix. So let's go back over here. And that's the first extruder, so it's P0.24. So let's do what we did in the previous one for the heat bed. P0.24, which is the same as this one over here. We'll save, not the same value, but the same nomenclature. And then yet again, let's do a system reboot, and then I'll check on the chat. Hopefully I don't keep switching screens where I get confused. Okay, this is going to take a second to reboot. And in theory, I can do this in like 10 minutes in an actual video tutorial. It's only been 60 minutes so far. So this will reconnect in a second. It's like watching paint dry when you have to wait. Okay. So let's clear this. Let's try and connect. Apparently we still have an issue. Did I forget to hit save? Probably. So that's right. That's right. So the next issue might be that I don't have it powered. So it says pH5. Let me check that real quick. Apparently search functionality does not like me today. Or it's hidden in another corner, that's why. Okay, heater pin is pH5. Okay, so I see what's going on. Sorry, I had to zoom out to look at this, but essentially what I'm doing wrong is right here, and where's the other one? That's the extruder. So you have the heat bed right here. So that mod that I made for sense pin is under a different category. So this label right here, where it says PA4 and PH4, those correspond over here. So you have your heat bed, which is P2.5. Then you have your first hot end, which is hot end 0, which is P2.7. So let's see if that works. That's probably it. P, and then we'll double check because apparently my mind's like a sieve right now. And we're working with the heat bed, so it's going to be P2.5. I'll probably use an example file in the video just because this is taking forever. And now we need to find the other one, if there is one. So heater pin. Apparently I might be going by it or I'm blind. Right there. So P2 dot, and then let's check it. 7. Hopefully this fixes it. Obviously I've already said that 3 times. So we saved it. Let's do another restart. And in theory, something might work. I'll check on the chat now while that's going on. Now there are example files. Obviously some of the example files are not real great. In this case I think I copied the default configuration file. So hopefully this will come back up. I may have to plug it in a moment to test homing. Now obviously homing's got other issues. In a full printer we can handle that. But I'm just showing the normal setup, which seems abnormal at this point. Okay, so here it comes. Let's try and connect. PF0 is not a valid pin. So we've got to search on PF0. So apparently one of the big mistakes that I made in this, obviously I'm going to end this in a couple minutes, but the stepper config is different. And I'll show you what's going on. I grabbed the wrong file for the example, but I don't want to configure every little piece in front of you. So I'll show you what's occurring. So the config file does look correct, but something's off with it. It looks like they may have updated it today. Maybe that's why I'm confused. But it's asking me to go step by step to fix everything. Essentially, you're going to be doing this iterative process over and over. The step pin is an actual pin on your board for your X stepper. So to find that, you'd actually have to go over to your board on the pins file, and I'll show you that in a second. Let me just get it so you can see it. So over here, your enable pin's right here, and someplace in here is your step pin, but they have a key usually, which is right here. So you see enable step dir, and they outline what the pin numbers are. Essentially all my pins are messed up. I thought I used the correct file, but let's take a look and see what I'm actually looking at here. So up here you're gonna have to make the mod again. I think I'm not using the right file, but you're getting the idea of what I need to do. So the step pin is gonna be over here for your X stepper. So you find step, it's P2.2. So if you go over to here, it's P2.2, and then you go through and you change each one accordingly. But there's an example file that probably has these correctly done. This is going to take me upwards of another hour to do in front of you. But essentially you can fix any error now just by understanding that the pins are incorrectly mapped to the board. And all I'm doing is going through the config file and mapping them to what the board is. Now there's other types of steppers you can do. The advanced ones are going to be like TMC 2208s, TMC 2209s. It looks like they tie in what the actual end stop pins are into the whole access. So you're probably going to have to fix this unless you find the right example file. Now if you put an exclamation point in front of some of these values, it will invert them, meaning that it'll take a true to a false and a false to a true. There's something with the caret, I forgot what it is, I'll have to look it up. But there's an example of an inversion of the pin where it has the exclamation point in front of it and then the pin number. But obviously the pin numbers are completely wrong in this configuration for me. So if those of you don't know, there's a Discord channel where you can ask questions. Right now there's a lot of people in there that can answer your questions. And for those that are giving super chats and Patreon stuff, thank you very much. It's greatly appreciated. It helps offset the costs of doing this. And just want to let y'all know that I want you to have a nice night, be safe, and if possible, get vaccinated. My channel is Ed's 3D Printers. I'll show you what it looks like real quick. It's actually probably in the description, but let me see if I can bring you a visual real quick. So let's see, desktop. And I have to drag it over so you can see it. So over here I have a general open chat. There's also people that talk about print quality or the BTT TFT. By the way, it doesn't work with Clipper yet. Then there's a printer or print quality where people talk about, you know, whatever they want to talk about. There's a BL Touch Room. And then there's share your designs. People are posting up their designs or things that are happening with their designs. And they're talking about certain things. So that is actually in the description, hopefully, of the actual video. But obviously I'm getting a little tired because I'm starting to stutter a little bit more than often. So everyone, thanks a lot. Take care and